I know that you had really incredible experience that I've heard a story you've told about making contact with 3 tall whites and being taken in the ship. What was one of your contact experiences like?
That was in 1976, but I've experienced some earlier when we were younger. But this one was, it was in a time when it was really hot. We didn't have air conditioning. We didn't have anything like that. But we slept upstairs, and it was hot. The air was still, there was no wind. I couldn't sleep, so I went down outside, went into the backyard where my parents, they had their little tables and chairs, and I sat down. And even sitting outside was very difficult because of the stillness, the heat. And I think Phoenix understands that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was similar to that. It's hot, muggy. No, it was uncomfortable. So I just sat there, and I noticed something moving in the sky, slow. And it was moonlight out. Stars were out, but I could see this figure moving. It was slow, and then it wasn't a cloud because these lines were straight. It was a triangle that was moving. And I was just watching there, sitting there watching it. Then it stopped. And this light come on, a round light, but it was actually a window come open from the inside, like Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 of them opened up, 3 lights. Then I was looking, and I could see people walking inside. And they walked to the window, and there's 3 people staring at me. So I ran inside to woke up my wife, and I asked her to come out. I wanted her to look at something. But when we came out, it was gone. But I could still see it on the south side. It was sitting in the sky. So I just said, well, I'm sorry for waking you up. You can go back to bed and all da-da-da. She went back to bed. But I walked out to the alley, and I was staring at it, and it was like a mile away up in the sky. And then all of a sudden my knees, my legs started to wobble. I couldn't stand still. And I remember thinking that I just experienced something that I just read about and I just hear about. So I tried to get to the house as fast as I could. Now I had a hard time. I couldn't run and couldn't walk at the same time. But I remember just touching the door. Then I was in this room, and this room was like this light here. It was all lit up, but there was no light bulbs. There was no light source. And I was looking around. That was the first thing I noticed. Where's the light? Where are the lights coming from? How come it's all lit in here, but there's no light? I kept thinking like that. And there was somebody sitting here, all dressed in white, but they had their back towards me, and they had their hands on something. They had their hands on something, and they're just moving their hands, and these lights were moving. And this other person, same thing. So I was trying to see what they were doing, but this man came. And this man could have been 7 to 8 feet tall, because I remember I had to look up at him.
How old were you?
76.
Oh, 76, okay.
Yeah. That's how many years ago? 30 years ago. So I didn't say, hello, how are you, what's your name, nothing. He had long hair, had long black hair. He was like a white guy from Phoenix. Long hair, young looking, handsome guy. He had a big nightgown or dress, or the white all the way down to the floor. Kind of looked like a Jesus type guy. So he didn't have no beard, straight, clean shaven, nice. So I asked him, I said, how does this work?
Good question.
How does this work? So he told me. So I remember thinking when he was telling me that anybody could do this. Anybody could do this. So simple. And that part of my, of what he told me is gone. It's gone. They took it. Because, you know, if you have something like that, somebody get a hold of you, they'll torture you to death until you get it out of you, you know. So that was gone. I didn't know that till later. But I said, how do you work this? He said, well, we travel by the law of light and by the law of thought. You'll need to learn this in the future for your survival. So, but you know, all my experiences with the star people, I never had any bad experiences. Zero. No anal probes, nothing, you know.
How long were you on board there? Do you remember?
I remember walking with him, and we went around the corner, and then I woke up.
Now, you mentioned that you had some other experiences when you were a child. Can you share those with us? Some of
Well,
those?
that was, well, I used to sneak out of my house at night when I may have been 7th or 8th grade, and I would walk into town. Town was like 2 miles away, and we would all the kids would meet down there. Would sneak out, and there was no electricity. Nobody had electricity. There was just one street lamp that the Presbyterian church had, and the town cop had electricity. Just those two. But we would all meet, and we would do the whistling. We know each other's whistle. We know where everybody's at by a whistle. Everybody's whistle is unique. Then we'd get together, and the first thing we'd do is we'd wake up the cop. We'd knock on his door, then we'd run and hide in the weeds. And it took some time. It took about, I don't know how many tries before he came out of his and got in his car and drove down the street and shined his spotlight all over. Then he'd go home, go to bed. Then everything was all right. We leave him alone. But he did it almost every time. It was just a ceremony, you know. So then we would go down to the church and would sit underneath that light and would visit and visit. Then when we see daybreak, then we'd take off home. And so one night we were sitting, and I remember somebody hollered and said, "Look," and pointed towards the river. And we looked, and there was a ball of like fluorescent green fire, and it was like maybe 5-6 stories high, and it was rolling up the river, just rolling real slow. And at first we all scattered, and we didn't know what it was. So I was small enough to lay underneath the propane tank. And I was sitting there, and I said, "What am I doing here? I might have a ray gun or something."
Propane tank may not be
Yeah,
the best place.
Yeah. So I got out there, and I noticed all the rest of the kids were running towards the river. So I got out and ran down there, and we watched it. Everybody's quiet. We just watched it roll up the river, and maybe about 4 miles up the river, and then it went around the corner. It was gone. But a lot of those times I slept outside. I liked sleeping outside. Had my own bed. Slept outside underneath a tree, and I used to see lights way back when, you know, and I didn't know anything about satellites or anything like that. And we still see the same things today. But way back then, you know, in 1960 or whatever, there was like a lot of lights. So I didn't even know the Sputnik existed then, or what was going on, you know. But yeah, there was a lot of activity, and we grew up with our parents teaching us and talking to us about they call them fireballs. And everybody that I knew had a story about different types of fireballs.